Hey, it's nice to meet you. You've been quite busy lately.
Yes, yeah, I gotta keep playing music, man. I'm compelled to, it's
Yeah,
like my reason to be. And so I'm trying to crank out and what can I say? Time's running out, so I
right.
gotta get out as much music as I can do, you
Yeah,
know?
I get it. Well,
Yeah.
speaking of time, I'm curious, how did you survive COVID and how did it change you now that we're kind of coming out of it?
Yeah, well, of course it was devastating. I live in Portland, Oregon, and it was devastating to the musical community here. Um, I consequently, though, I had to, we were all sequestered, and so I'm kind of locked up in my studio. And there's my grand piano. I got nothing to do, and there's my grand piano, and anytime I practice, it always leads me to composing. So I had lots of time, and I decided to really focus on creating a variety of repertoire, new stuff. And then also one thing that was partly my wife's idea was to put on concerts on my front porch, not at the house I live in now, but the house I used to live in. And it was and it was the perfect situation. It was not a cul-de-sac, but it's sort of a quiet little road, so there wasn't a lot of traffic in front. So I would hire a band, a quartet, and we would play music on my front porch, and the neighborhood came out in droves. We had upwards of 70 people sometimes, and they bring lawn chairs and beverage, and they just hang out, and they had live music, and they were so starved for live music that it really went over well. And I had some wonderful experiences, and I had a venue now to play exactly what I had written, say, earlier that week. So that was really a boon for me.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about these two albums. They've kind of come out concurrently. How does it feel now to have new material out?
Well, it's great. I so yeah, they are the culmination. Most of the stuff was written during the COVID times. A couple of things were written before that. But I recorded actually the solo piano album first. Again, just because I had never done that, and of course, it's a real challenge for a pianist to make a solo piano record, and I felt like it was something that was kind of missing from my opus. And so I did that, but then I had this terrific band, this great quartet, and so decided to record the quartet also.
So, so how did this journey begin for you? How did you get into the music? Where were you born and raised? Early influences kind of
I
thing.
was I was born in Queens, so I'm from New York City. I grew up in Westchester County, but I moved out to Portland, Oregon, back in 1977 after going to school at Indiana University, and I met a musician there who talked about Portland like the promised land, and I got here, and I started working right away. I was in my 20s, mid 20s, and 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 I met some really great musicians, and was fortunate enough to that they would hire me to play with them. I got to know Jim Pepper very well, and Jim Pepper I still think is unique in American music history. Was the first human being to combine traditional Native American songs, words with English words with melodies. He had a sort of a pan universal style. He could play very much in sort of a gospel country blues. He played the hell out of the blues. But he also could play the most outside screaming you've ever heard. And he was able to integrate that all. And, that was kind of amazing. No one had ever done that really before. So I got to work with Jim for the last 14 years of his life. And then I worked also with a drummer here named Mel Brown. I worked with Mel for over 30 years at different clubs, and was fortunate to have those gigs also. Mel had a septet at the end with four horns, so I got to write for four horns and rhythm section, and that was really a great experience too. And the thing that was great about Mel is we played. I have an album out on Origin 2 records called Tuesday Night. It sort of reflects some of the music, some of the material we were playing on Tuesday nights at Jimmy Mac's for 20 years.
Wow.
We had a few Tuesdays off,
Sure.
if there was sometimes there'd be a touring act that would come through. but that was a long time to have a gig, you know,
Yeah.
and it was great. It was great to have that kind of steadiness. It's not something that happens in the jazz world. So
Yeah. So speaking of gigs, what was the first live gig you saw that blew you away? First live jazz gig?
first live jazz gig. Wow. Well, that would have to be Rahsaan Roland Kirk at the Village
Wow.
Vanguard. This would have been in the probably, I don't know, 1970, 69 or 1970. So
Wow.
the first four jazz concerts I saw were Rahsaan Roland Kirk, Duke Ellington, let's see, Miles Davis, and Charles Mingus. And and like I didn't realize at the time that this would be the best I would ever. I mean, I was blown away. These guys, each one of those people was. I mean, their music was intense and beautiful, but they were big. They had these big personalities that completely knocked me out, and
Wow.
it really helped. So I'm fortunate. I saw Duke. I actually saw Duke Ellington twice, and I'd seen him once. My dad threw up his hands. He goes, "Oh my God, he's going to become a musician. Well, at least he should hear some good music." So it took me to hear Duke Ellington at the Rainbow Room in Manhattan. And then several months later, Duke was playing a benefit concert up in Westchester, and I remember seeing him, and he and the band were off to the side of the stage before they went on, and all smoking cigarettes. And anyway, and here I'm a teenager, and I'm gawking at Duke, and he winked at me, man. Duke Ellington winked at me.
Man
And
alive.
was that the moment where the impulse traveled from his eye into my eye? And so I played Duke's music, and I was a music teacher at the university for 20 years, and would talk about him every year. And it's like, maybe that's when it happened, that contagion there to
You
play
got the
jazz.
jazz transference.
Exactly. It was incredible. Yeah.
That's cool. So, of all of these capacities that you've been in throughout the years, as a recording artist, as a teacher, as a promoter, all these things, what do you look forward to the most? What is it that inspires you the most as a professional jazz musician?
Well, I hear things in my head. I imagine music, and so bringing that into the world then is very fulfilling for me. I feel like it's a kind of a spiritual quest, that there's something, some force that's enabling me to be the vessel. And I'm not the first person. I mean, you've probably heard other musicians say this too, that when things are really going well, I just sort of open the valve and let this stuff come through. I have to say that performing is very gratifying to me too. I love to play. For an audience, and it's particularly to bring some new music to an audience. This makes my life worth living.
So, the backbone to all of this is the love that you have for this craft. Why do you love jazz?
Jazz is the salvation of the world, really, because it brings so many different people and cultures, backgrounds together, and that's the way it's been from the very beginning. I mean, when Jelly Roll Morton said it's got to have that Latin tinge to really be jazz. I mean, that was over 100 years ago. And so this idea, this acceptance of lots of different flavors and spices and tastes is what really makes the music happen. Certainly the category, I mean, categories are weird, it's they're thought up by record companies, really, but world music is a definite outgrowth of jazz. And so this idea of bringing different cultures together so that we're all communicating, we're all appreciating what each culture can bring, I think that's important. And I think if the world looked at jazz as its model, I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
That the whole world decide, oh yeah, let's all come together, and what do you have to say, and what do you have to say, and how can we say this together? I think the world would be a better place.
What a unique perspective. I totally agree with it. So, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends,
Well,
fans, students, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are? The
Uh-oh. Well, let's
therapy
see.
question.
Really? Do I like myself? Well, sometimes, sometimes there's always room for improvement. And that's another aspect about playing jazz. I think that's important is that, you could probably ask if you could have interviewed, John Coltrane after making a Love Supreme. Was that it? Is that as good as it gets? And he go, no, I wish I could have done this story. I mean,
Uh-huh.
probably, and so I think that that's part of the part of the journey is is important, is maybe the point. It's sure, it's nice to have the end result. So in my career, I've punctuated it with an album here and an album there, but it's actually the process of trying to create that music. I mean, what would I have done with my time if, with all the thousands of hours that I've spent playing and practicing and composing? I don't know, man. I would be a different person, that's for sure. But I feel like it's the best use of my existence here on the planet. So
Absolutely. Well said. So the two new albums are How Can It Be and The Remainder. Where can folks pick this up if they want to get it in the right fashion? Live shows, anything about your world, where can they go?
yes, they're available on PJCE Records. You can get them through Bandcamp. They're on Spotify, so you can check out the music ahead of time. There are two songs that appear on each album. So there's a solo version of Too Soon, and I have to mention this too. Too Soon was written for our first drummer, Carlton Jackson, who was an incredible human being, a great drummer, a great musician, and he also had a radio show on KMHD, the local jazz radio show that he did for many years, and was extremely knowledgeable about music. I mean, I could mention something outside of jazz, a rapper or a country and western band. It's, oh yeah, I know they made this record, and it's like, wow, how does somebody know all this stuff? And Carlton was a beautiful guy, and he died very suddenly in June of 2021. And he literally had played all of the front porch concerts I had done up to that point, so all through 2020 and throughout the spring of 2021. And he did not die of COVID, but he did die during the heat dome that happened here in Portland, where it got to 116 degrees. So anyway, it was devastating. We missed this guy. And I seriously think he had the best jazz radio show in America. It was just like, he would always have a theme every week, of what he wanted to play. So anyway, so we missed him terribly. And so Too Soon is written for Carlton. In fact, the whole quartet album is dedicated to the memory of Carlton. And the other song is Bozo Soaks on the Golf Course, which is written for a former president. And it actually was written before January 6th. It was written in December before that. But again, just, what can you say?
I already played that on the show, and I knew what it was about, and I totally embraced it. So I'm in.
Yeah, someday somebody's going to get in my face and say, "How dare you?" But it's like, no, come on.
Come on.
It's
Yeah,
the clown there.
yeah, he is a clown. It's the perfect epitome of it. So,
Yeah, really.
Gordon, this has been great. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for letting us into your world a little while.
Sure.
And best of luck with everything.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah.
I'll look for it here on Neon Jazz, huh?
Yes, sir. Yeah.